If you like my content, you can go to my YouTube page and click the join button, and for as little as 99 cents a month, you can become a member. If you're a member, you get access to beautiful little emojis on live stream, and you will also get a little gesture hat next to your name. You can also support me on Patreon for only $5 a month, uh, which would be very helpful. It's helping me upgrade my equipment and such. All right. This next video here is called Celebrating Columbus, and it's a 5-minute video about Christopher Columbus. We'll see where it goes after that first one. I'm highly doubting we're going to see anything that it has any brain cells attached to it. I wonder who they're going to have talk about this one. Okay, here we go.
He ventured where no other man of his age dared to go. He saw things no other man of his age had ever seen.
So, okay, off the bat, I love the framing when people say that Columbus ventured places where no one else had gone, even though there were already people living there, right? Were there not already millions of indigenous people living in these areas, but apparently Columbus was the first one there? Furthermore, he wasn't even the first European who made it to the New World. We now know that the Vikings made it to sort of North America earlier, so that's not even true to begin with. Yeah, you're right, Jay Shadow. So false in multiple ways here. Anyway, he saw things no other man of his age had ever seen, thus implying that the millions of people already living in the New World were not human, right? That's kind of what it seems like they're implying.
He discovered a new world. For centuries, he was universally admired as a hero. Now, he's widely considered to be a despoiler of paradise, an enslaver, and a genocidal maniac.
Yeah, based,
I'm
true.
talking, of course, about Christopher Columbus. So which is true? Is he a hero or a villain?
Villain, 100% villain. Even at the time he was viewed as a villain. I'll let him keep talking. Oh, is this? They have Michael Knowles doing this? What kind of expertise does Michael Idiot Knowles have and anything to do with Christopher Columbus?
The truth is complicated, as the truth often is, especially when you have to go back 500 years to find it. But let's try to get as close as we can. Columbus was born in 1451 in the port city of Genoa, Italy. At a time when birth often determined destiny, his origins were entirely unremarkable. His father was a middle-class wool weaver who expected his son to follow the same path. But Columbus had different plans. The age of discovery was dawning. The future belonged to the bold, and the bold went to sea.
So on a side note here, folks, in 1492, when Columbus sailed the ocean blue, if you've ever heard that little tune, Spain had just finished its conquests of the Iberian Peninsula and kicked the Muslim empires out of Iberia. And the Spanish crown had essentially funded itself by looting Muslim possessions in Spain. And it might not be a coincidence that it was 1492 when they finished conquering Spain, and then suddenly they start looking all over the world for other places they can loot to continue funding the Spanish crown. So it's more than just there are people that were bold that need to go to sea. Well, they were looking for places to loot, to steal from, so that they could bring more booty back to the Spanish crown. Okay.
By the time he turned 30, Columbus had sailed to Iceland, Ireland, and Africa. Somewhere on his many voyages, he became obsessed with the idea that there was a westward sea route from Europe to India. But there were no...
And why? Why did he want to? They don't mention this. Why did they want to go to India? Because of the spices, of the wealth, and the possible booty they could get from there to help fund the Spanish crown, etc. Yeah, they make it seem like he was just curious. He just wanted to figure out if it was there and go there.
Maps to consult. Only wild rumors of sea monsters and endless ocean. He put together the 15th century version of a PowerPoint presentation for the King of Portugal, then the world's leading sea power. But the king, heeding the advice of his experts, turned him down. It simply couldn't be done, the experts told the king. It was pure speculation, and an expensive one at that. So Columbus took his plans to Spain. But King Ferdinand and Queen Isabella weren't interested either, at least not at first. Columbus persevered. After 8 years, They finally relented. They gave the explorer 3 small ships. There was a time when every school kid knew their names: the Nina, the Pinta, and the Santa Maria, and the
Oh,
year in which Columbus set sail, 1492. Except for a
oh
compass and
God.
the stars, Columbus had virtually no navigation tools at his disposal. He was, to mix metaphors, flying blind. He was heading west. That's about all he knew. Once the ships left the Canary Islands, they were on their own.
Mhm.
His crews stayed loyal
Yep.
for the first week, but by the 3rd week, they had lost their nerve.
Oh,
Columbus, however, never lost his.
yeah. By the way, the reason they lost their nerve is because Columbus was going into the dark, right? They didn't know where they were going, and yeah, his crew members trying to like, is this guy crazy? Like, is there even like, are we just going to die out here? And Columbus was threatening them and such. On a side note, folks, just to give you a taste of Columbus's character, uh, he made a promise that the first person to see land would be granted a reward. All right, the first person on these ships that saw land would be granted a reward. Well, one night, one of these guys was looking out and they saw land, and Columbus hadn't even woken up yet. And after Columbus wakes up and goes on board the ship, that sailor goes up to him and goes, "Hey, I saw land. It was over there." And you know what Columbus does, because he didn't want to have to actually pay out that money? He goes, "Oh, well, I saw it last night actually, so none of you get the money." I know that's a small thing, but that kinda shows you how, his character, okay?
By sheer force of will, he kept his men in line. Finally, after 10 long weeks at sea, on the night of October 11th, Columbus spotted land. He called it San Salvador.
Mhm.
Today, we know it as the Bahamas.
Yep.
There, Columbus and his men encountered the Taino tribe. The first encounter between Europe and the Americas went well.
Uh,
The
nope.
Taino were
Nope. Okay. I'm gonna stop here. I have some quotes. Literally, these are taken from Columbus's journal. This is the first thing he said about the Taino when he met them. And this is not an exaggeration. These are literally direct quotes. Let me pull it up here, folks. And we can you can decide. Oopsie, you guys can decide for yourselves if you think that meeting went well. Here it is. Okay, I'll read to you here. This is from Columbus's journal. Here we go. This is what he said about the Taino. They were very well built, with very handsome bodies and very good faces. They do not carry arms or even know them. They will make excellent slaves. Let's go on to the next one. A little later in the same paragraph, he says the following: with 50 men, they can all be subjugated and made to do whatever is required of them. Okay. A bit later on the side note here, this is a little bit after Columbus met the Taino. He was commenting about how a lot of his men on these ships were starting to want some of the women and the girls, literally children, amongst the Taino. You can guess what they wanted them for. And he said the following: there are plenty of dealers who go about looking for girls. Those aged from 9 to 10 are now in demand. And for all ages, a good price must be paid. I'll continue.
curious and helpful. Columbus was emphatic that his crew treat them with kindness and respect.
Yeah, I just read you the quote, folks. This is bullshit.
Lest you think that Columbus stumbled on the Garden of Eden, the islands were also inhabited by the Caribs, a tribe of cannibals for whom, according to Pulitzer Prize-winning historian Sam
Okay, there's no proof of this. It is possible they did engage in some cannibalism. There were some groups in the New World that did that. Typically, it would only be small bits of flesh after battle and things like that, with the thought of that of like sort of as sort of a terror tactic. But that this, the Europeans love to emphasize cannibalism because it was considered such a taboo in Europe. So we don't have evidence that the Caribs were cannibals, but of course the Europeans emphasize that as a way of making it more justified to enslave them, murder them, etc.
Samuel Eliot Morison, babies were a delicacy, or in Morison's
Oh
words,
God.
a toothsome morsel. Like every place else on Earth, in every time in history, the local peoples were a mixed bag. some good, some not so good. Upon his return to Spain, word of the Italian explorer's successful voyage quickly spread throughout Europe. A new world had been discovered, and the old world would never be the same.
Okay, they didn't even mention this, so let me give you another quote, folks. I'm gonna give you a content warning here. I mean, it's not terrible, but here's another quote from Columbus's journal that I put in my document here. I'm sorry, this is not from Columbus's journal. This is from one of his friends, and who was on one of these ships, one of Columbus's ships. Here we go. I captured a very beautiful woman who the Admiral Columbus gave to me. When I had taken her to my cabin, she was naked, as was their custom. I was filled with a desire to take my pleasure with her and attempted to satisfy my desire. She was unwilling, and so treated me with her nails that I wish I had never begun. I then took a piece of rope and whipped her soundly, and she let forth such incredible screams that you would not have believed your ears. Eventually, we came to such terms, I assure you, that you would have thought that she had been brought up in a school for whores. Need I say more? Need I say more? Columbus was a monster, and it's really gross to downplay that.
Columbus was a man meant for the sea. On land, he was easily outmaneuvered and betrayed by professional politicians and bureaucrats. It is on their dubious, self-serving accounts that modern attacks on Columbus's reputation are based. In
Nope.
his own day, these attacks made the explorer's life a misery.
Yeah, as a matter, I told you, even people at the time thought he was disgusting. Anyone curious? Look up Bartholomew de las Casas, who wrote a scathing letter to the Spanish monarchy, basically detailing the crimes of Columbus, and rightfully so. Okay, and yeah, they made his life more difficult. I don't really give a shit. Okay, if if it were me, I would have had him beheaded. Okay, that shows how bad he was. That there were people at the time even that were like, "Wow, this guy's a monster."
Columbus was not blameless. He sold natives into slavery. But the explorer did not invent slavery, which was common around the world long before and long after Columbus's time. As for the charge of genocide, there was no genocide. There were atrocities.
As I've said before, folks, there's nothing quite as disgusting as genocide denial. The Taino are basically non-existent anymore. A combination of enslavement, disease, and murder. There are many different groups of Native Americans who no longer exist anymore because of Columbus, the slavery, the murder. It's just factually inaccurate. Every historian would agree it was genocide. It's just a lie.
Most occurring after Columbus was dead and gone. There was also widespread intermarriage between the Spaniards and the natives, which eventually led to the people we now call Hispanic or Latino.
Um, Yeah, most of the time those marriages were forced, and by the way, a lot of those children were not from consensual relationships. Um, yeah.
It's unfair to focus only on Columbus's sins. It's also unfair to judge someone who lived 500 years ago by today's standards. His own assessment of his actions is much more revealing. Let those who are fond of blaming and finding fault, while they sit safely at home, ask, "Why did you not do thus and so?" Well, there's a reason why Columbus has so long been celebrated,
Uh,
why so many statues, schools, towns, cities, a national holiday, an Ivy League university, and even a country bear his name. It's this simple fact. When we celebrate Columbus, we celebrate the arrival of Western civilization to the Western Hemisphere. And if you can't celebrate
okay, here's more of that Western civilization crap. He invented. Okay, yeah. Well, hey, hey, let's say that. Let's say he did bring Western civilization to that hemisphere. We all know what Western civilization looks like now, don't we? Slaughter, slavery. Okay. Um, And by the way, I love the framing here that they're claiming that, like, what he mentioned, how Columbus introduced slavery. Yeah, no one claims that. No one is claiming Columbus introduced slavery. It had been around ages before that. I've never heard a person say that it was Columbus that did that.
that, it says much more about your moral compass than about history's greatest explorer. I'm Michael
What?
Knowles, host of The Michael Knowles Show. For Prager,
Wait, he's saying that not wanting to celebrate Columbus says a lot more about your moral compass? Well, that is true, but I doubt he means it in the same way I would, okay?
University.
This
Okay. Oh,
video
okay, disgusting. Absolutely disgusting. Gross propaganda, alright,